And let's pull up. Okay, so welcome to this next session. This is the first session for the backend squad. So for me, this is some of my favorite stuff. Hopefully you'll find it as exciting. But what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn more Node.js. The backend that we'll be learning will be Node.js. So we're going to go into a lot more detail about Node.js and actually start doing some very Node.js specific things. So we're going to learn more Node.js, how to import or require Node modules. We're going to learn Express, how to write a web server. So with Node.js, we're going to actually write a web server, and that's going to be the backend for our project. We're also going to learn MySQL. Okay, we're going to learn the basics of database, of relational databases with MySQL. We're going to learn about tables. We're going to learn about SQL, which is structured query language, and how to write queries. We're going to learn what makes a database table, and all of that good stuff. Okay, and then we're going to put all of that together in working on the first user story. So the front-end squad yesterday started looking at user story class 1. And so the backend squad is also going to start with that same user story, working on creating the backend for that. And that's going to be our objective for today. Okay, so we have 1 hour and 55 minutes to get all of this done. So let's see how much of it will get done. My goal is to get all of it done to where at the end of this class, we actually have a REST API endpoint that serves user story class 1. Okay, so let's get into it. Node.js. Node.js is JavaScript for the server side. Now remember when we talked about JavaScript, I said JavaScript is the language of the web. It was originally created to add interactivity and to modify, well, the DOM, essentially HTML, right? The DOM is a document object model, which is how HTML elements, are understood by the browser. And JavaScript is written to interact with that object module and thereby manipulate it, modify it, which is how we get animation, how we get interactivity, right? So a lot of the interactivity that we have on web applications are driven by JavaScript. Most of the interactivity we have are driven by JavaScript. If you click and something happens, if you mouse over and something happens, if you click and data loads magically out of nowhere and something just shows up on the page, that's the free JavaScript. But that's front-end JavaScript because it runs in the browser. Now, a few years ago, Node.js was developed to provide JavaScript that runs on the server, right? And so that gives us the ability to actually write server applications in JavaScript or write server-side scripts in JavaScript. So the backend squad will focus a lot on Node.js and writing server-side scripts that will provide what we call the business logic or the stuff that the front-end folks are working on. All right, so Node.js is server-side JavaScript. Now, one new thing that we're going to get introduced to today is NPM, the Node Package Manager. Okay, NPM is a dependency manager for Node. Essentially, NPM allows you to install Node modules, which are essentially like installing software, right? Into your application, into the application you're developing. So with NPM, when you install a package, it also installs all the dependencies for that package and helps to make sure that dependencies have the right versions. It sounds like Greek, but sometimes there's a version mismatch. You might have a package A that's version 1.0 that requires a package B that's version 2.0. So what happens when version 2.5 of package B comes out that's not compatible with your version 1.0? NPM will make sure to only install the version 2.0 for your package 1.0. So it's a dependency manager. It makes sure that dependencies are installed and that the right versions are installed so that your program runs consistent. Okay, so we're going to use npm to install various libraries and packages that we need for our project. There are a whole bunch of Node modules and packages that come with Node out of the box, but there are third-party open source libraries that we're also going to use, and those will install with npm. Okay, any questions? Okay, so the first step here, I'm going to share my screen. And I am going to, in Visual Studio Code here, I'm going to actually open, let me do this. So I'm going to actually open Visual Studio Code up into our classroom folder. Use this. And let's do this. So I have Visual Studio Code up into a classroom folder. Close these files. Set everything here. And I'm going to do something that you guys don't need to do. Okay? If you do this, you're going to get conflicts. So just don't do it. I'm going to push this out and then you get that configuration. But what I'm going to do is, if I say, I'm going to say npm init here, and this is to initialize a new npm project to the classroom folder. I won't go into the details of what this means, but this is just to start. So this package is called classroom, and I'll leave it as that, version 1, no description, entry point. I'm just going to leave all that there. So I'm going to go with the defaults for all of this. Okay, is that okay? Yes. All right. What this command actually did, what I really needed it from it was to create a file here called package.json, which is this file here. And so the answers I provided were used to create this package.json file. This package.json file is pretty much the most important file in our Node project because it is where all our packages and their dependencies are going to be recorded. Excuse me. It also provides the ability to write some commands and scripts and all that. All that is great for now. But for now, just understand that all the dependencies for any packages we install, this is our registry. And this is where the packages are registered for our project. When we did an npm, okay, I remember some people weren't here yesterday. So whenever we do npm install, it actually looks in this file to find information about the version of package to install. And this is helpful because when I push this out, when you do a git pull and you do an npm install, it will install on your computer the same version of that package. That's fantastic for team development. That makes sure everybody's on the same base, right? You all have the same packages and the same versions. So package.json is the registry of all the packages in use on this project and just this project and their versions. Now, any packages installed are installed into a folder called Node modules, and you'll see that happen once we start. Okay, but just remember, npm is the Node package manager and it's used for dependency management. okay, for package management. All right. Any questions? Okay.
So, sorry, just a quick one
Mhm.
here. So this package,
Mhm.
basically what you're saying is, at the end of it, after everything we've done, this will basically encompass everything that we do in the right
No,
order. No.
no. This will only hold the things that you install.
Okay.
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 This will
Install
hold.
file.
Yes, this will hold what you install, and we're going to install a package right now, right, to get started, and you will see what that means. Um, Now, to start a basic server, Node.js has a module called HTTP, right? That's built into it that actually will set up a web server, right? But for this project, we're going to use an open source module called Express. Okay, we're going to use Express.js, and it's available. The documentation for it is at, I think I have it open here somewhere. Yeah, so the documentation for it is here at expressjs.com. Okay, and this is a fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. So Express allows you to build your own web server very quickly. So we're going to use that to actually create a web server. So by the end of this class, you should know how to create a web server, how to define routes on it, accept traffic, and provide responses. Okay. For the backend squad, our objective is to create what we call REST APIs. Okay. And that's our goal for the backend squad. It doesn't mean anything right now. I'll explain what REST means as we go forward. But first thing we're going to do right now is we're going to actually install Express. Now remember, don't do this yet, because if you do this, you're going to have conflicts when you pull. We're going to be modifying the same file. So just hold on. I'm going to commit and push, and then we'll be able to pull. Okay. So just follow with me first. So to install Express and to use npm to install a package, use the command npm install and the package name. Okay, npm install package name. You can run npm install without the package name, and that what that will do is it will look in package.json to see what packages are registered there, and then install them. So look for the package and the package version and install them. So that's if you run npm install without the package name. But for the most part, your use of npm install will be to install specific packages that you want to use, that you want to work with. And in this class, we're going to actually install a few packages. Okay, so the first package you're going to install is Express. So I'm going to type npm install Express. Okay, now when I do this, it will install Express. And I don't know if you noticed here in my folder tree that I now have a node modules folder. And if I open that up, I have a bunch of libraries installed, and I have Express. Express is going to be somewhere. I have Express here installed. I only installed Express, but it installed all of these others because they are dependencies for Express. Now, if we look in our package.json, nothing has changed, right? I don't see a new entry for Express. Here's why. I didn't ask it to save that installation, because sometimes you install modules that you don't want to track. So I'm going to do the installation for Express again, and this time I'm going to ask it to save it. So if I'm going to do --save, and when I run this, It's done the Express installation. And if I come into my package.json here, you see I now have a new block called dependencies, and I have Express and the version of Express is installed. Okay, if I push this out now and you pull and you just run npm install with no arguments, it will install this package of Express because I have it in my package.json file. That will make sure that we are using the same version of Express, which is perfect. Now, it also means that when we do set up a server and we want to deploy, it's actually deploy the same version of Express on the server, which is going to keep everything consistent. Okay? So that's the npm install command. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. So typically, is it the project lead that would do this process that you're doing right now?
Initializing the project, yes. But after that, as you develop, you're going to need different packages. Whenever you need a package, you npm install it. And you will then, you npm install -- save it so that it becomes part of package.json and it's available. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Right.
Can I? Hi. So for what we're doing in here, there can only be one package .js JSON, right?
Yes, there's always only one package.json in any folder. You could have package.json in subsequent folders because a folder might have its own separate npm install process. So for example, if we open up this web app folder, it has its own package.json, which is different. And you see that this already has a lot of dependencies because this is an Angular app and it has dev dependencies. I will talk about dev dependencies and how they're different from regular dependencies. Okay. Now, the dependencies that you would install are dependencies that are part of your program, part of your application, right? Now, there are dependencies that you could install that are just part of your development environment. They're tools to aid in development, but you don't want them to be built with your application, right? Dependencies like test runners, like if you have a test framework for writing unit tests or integration tests, those are part of the development process, but they're not part of the product. So you will install those and save as dev dependency. And the way you would do that would be -- save dev, right? So for example, if I want to install, I'll do npm install, right? Super test -- save -dev, right? That's install super test, but super test is just for testing. It's not part of the product, right? So I made sure I saved it as dev rather than just a save because I want it to be separate in my package.json. So if we come to package.json, you see this now, I have Express, which is going to be part of my product. And then we have super test, which is just part of my development environment. This is a tool for writing integration tests for API endpoints. Okay, we're going to use this later, but don't worry about it for now.
And so, and all these dependencies, I guess I call it dependencies that you're installing, are part like the npm. These are like standard things that npm knows about. So that's so when you typed in Express and you type the super test, it knew exactly which ones to go pick and dump in there. Okay.
Yes. All right. It's a package manager. Now, every npm module or npm package is actually typically in Git and out on the web. So you can actually Google it and you can say, okay, super test, right? And there's what's called the npm repository or the npm. So you can see here, super test, and you see npm. And if we come here, the npm registry.
Got
You
you.
come to the NPM registry here, and this is the super test page on the NPM registry, and it has the documentation for using super test and so on and so forth. And if you come here, now remember this is all open source. So if you actually want to see the source code for this and contribute to it, it's usually a link to GitHub, right? So that's the GitHub repository for Supertest. And this is all the source code. If you want the source code for Supertest, you can find it somewhere here, maybe in lib, right? So this is Supertest, it's open source. But this is an NPM package, okay? And remember, it has an NPM repository page where you get the documentation for it. So there are packages for doing all kinds of really cool things. There are packages for editing images and really doing super cool stuff, okay? So we're going to use a few NPM packages here in this class today, okay? So I'm going to cover a few topics side by side. So this first topic, we're talking about Node.js. Let's just get started and let's create a Node server, right? Let's create an application server, a web server, okay? So we're in Visual Studio Code here.
Sorry,
what do I need to
I'm
do?
not sure.
Right? What do I need to do? We're in Visual Studio Code. What do I need to do? I want to create a new file. Like I want to create a new script. What's the first thing I do?
New file.
Okay. Yeah, how do I do that? I don't know how to do this.
Well, I use those little things.
Control N.
You know the icon on the file? That's what I use.
Okay, this one?
Yeah.
Or this one?
Yeah. No, yeah, that one. That was his new file.
Okay, this is a shortcut, so I can say new file here.
Yeah.
I can do someone say Control N, which gives me a new file.
Yes.
Right? Now, what is great about doing it here? Let me show you this to make life easier. If I click on here, it actually asks me to name the file. And so I'll just name this index.js. Right? That's super sweet, right? That way you don't have to do a save as. Okay? So I have my new file here. Now, we're going to learn a new concept. And this is the concept of importing a new package, right? Importing a Node module. The keyword for bringing in an external module is require. Okay, now let's do this. I also want to show you how to use documentation, right? So let's go with Express. And let's go with the getting started. Well, if we go here, you know, the installing is all there. We've done the npm init. We did the npm install express save, right? Now I want to create a web server, right? So what we're going to do here, if you look at the documentation here, you see this keyword require. That is how you pull in an external module. So we're going to come here and we're going to say const express equals require express. And this will bring in a new module, right? And if we say const app equals express. Now this module exports a function. I'll tell you what exporting is because we're going to do exports, but that is how a module is exposed so that when you require it, it returns something. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you see what I've done here is I've required express into a variable called express, right? What I actually get back when I require express is a function. And so I can call that function, which is stored in my variable here. And the output of that function, what that function returns, I'm saving in an app variable. Okay, you see that right here. Now, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say, let's just do what they did there, which is define a port. I won't bother with that right now. And I'm going to say app.listen, right, at port 4300. Okay. If I do this, let me put a console.log here, right? Console.log starting web server, or starting server on port 4300. Go to HTTP localhost. All right, done. Okay, so I have this. This is my file, right? How do I run it in Node? My file is called index.js. So if I want to run it, how do I run it?
So you just run node and then the name of the file.
Okay, it should be node index. Okay, look at this here. It's starting server on port 4300. Go to that address. I go to this address right here. Actually have a server running, but it says cannot get slash because I don't have a route defined for slash. I'm going to explain what that means in 1 second, but I want to show you what happens if I stop my server with Control C. Stop it with Control C, and I come back here and I refresh. It says this site can't be reached. So this is proof that when I actually run my server, it's actually serving that address. If I start my server again, and I come here, and I refresh, now it's not saying this site can be reached. There is a site there, but there's nothing for that route. That's the most basic form, right, of an Express server. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see what's going on here. The command that actually sets up the server and starts a listen loop is this command, app.listen, is what actually now sets up the server to listen on port 4300. But what does listening on port 4300 actually mean? If you remember the very first class, right, I described the internet, well, the web servers and browsers. I described the transactions between them as a request-response model, right? Does anyone remember that? Anyone?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. So whenever you go to a website, www.google.com, what happens in the background is your browser makes a request to a server with that address, right? That www.google.com is translated to an address for a specific server on the internet. So the browser makes a request to that address. The server at that address responds with the page, right? It responds with the HTML that it holds for www.google.com, right? That's a request response model. Now, if you want to talk to me, right, what do I have to do to hear you when you speak to me? Anyone?
Listen.
I have to listen. So the server is listening for requests coming in. That's why we have this listen keyword. So you're telling, so here you create a new Express server. That server is just there, but it's not doing anything. And then you tell the server, okay, listen for requests coming in on a particular port. What's a port? A port is like a door. Now, for those who have flown out of, let's say like Dulles Airport, right? You come out of the door or you go in at door 1, door 2, like the airlines have different doors. Like they'll say United is at door 4 or, Virgin Atlantic is at door 1, whatever. You're going in through a particular door, right? The airport has multiple different doors. The same thing with servers. Servers have multiple different ports that requests can come in through, right? And the server listens on specific ports. So your standard web port is port 80, right? Your standard web port. When you type www.google.com, that's actually making a request to the server at port 80, right? That is the HTTP port, okay? So once you do the HTTP protocol, now if you don't add HTTP in your browser, the browser will automatically add it and make a request over HTTP, okay? And that goes to port 80, 80. That's the port that the web server is listening on. Now you may have another application listening on port 81. If you make a request to port 81, what you will get back is from whatever server is listening on port 81 of that same address. Similar to if you go to Dulles Airport to pick up someone, right? If you go to door 1, the person that's waiting at door 1 is not the same person waiting at door 4, right? So if you go pick up the person at door 4 instead of the person at door 1, you go pick up someone's daughter or someone's wife or someone's chicken, the chicken fluid, whatever it is, right? So you have to make a request to the right port to hit the right server because servers listen on specific ports. And the syntax for specifying the port in your browser request is colon. So you have the address and then you have the port. Many applications listen on specific ports. Some listen on port 8080 instead of port 80, right? Because the server that's running is waiting on port 8080. Some listen on port 8081 instead of port 80. Some listen on port 443, which is the SSL or HTTPS port. If you make a secure request, it typically will go to port 443, okay? And then you have like database servers listen on different ports and use a different protocol, okay? So that's what a port is. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I had one question.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna pull all of this off of Git, correct?
Yes, all of this will be in Git and you can pull it when I'm done, yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So now, we're going to talk a little bit more about HTTP and we're going to talk about HTTP verbs, okay? I'm going to come here and remember how I said, okay, let's do this in Chrome. Wait, am I in Chrome? All right, I'm in Chrome. All right, so remember how I said, when you go to Chrome and you right click, you have this inspect option. Let's do that. And then so that I'm going to do that to show this. And then I'll come to the network tab and I'm going to refresh this. Now in Chrome, if you don't have the method column showing up here, right click here and make sure method is checked. So I'll come to method and I'll check it. Okay. And I'm going to clear all of this and we're going to refresh. So right here, site cannot be reached, right? But when I come here and I start up my Express server with node index and I refresh this, if you see what's going on here, it's made a request for localhost port 4300, right? And it made a GET request. And the status it got back was a 404, which means not found. Okay?
Sorry,
Now,
how did you get the method again?
right click, just right click on the column header.
Okay, thanks.
Right click on the column header and check method. All right? Now, let's break this down. The type of request that was made was a GET request. There are many different types of requests that can be made, but this is called the HTTP verb. Okay, this is the verb for the request. You can have a GET request. You can have a PUT, P-U-T request. You can have a POST request. You can have a DELETE request. You can have a patch request. You can have an options request, a head request. There are lots of different types. There are different HTTP verbs. And if you wanted to research it and you did a Google search for HTTP verbs, right? There, you get the MDN page for that. Now, like I said, we will use the proper terminology so that you know what to look for. So these are called HTTP verbs or HTTP request methods. So here, where's our lovely page that we're looking at? Here. If we look at this really lovely page we had, this column here is called method. Okay? So the GET method is really that. It's making a server to the request. It's trying to get a page. A POST method sends data to the server. Same thing as a PUT method. A PUT method puts data to the server. Same thing as a patch method. It also sends data to the server. And then a DELETE method asks the server to delete something, right? We'll get to all of those in more detail because we're going to build, API endpoints to handle all of those different types of requests. But that is what this is. The response from the server was a 404 response, which is an HTTP error code. We won't talk about these today. We'll have another session where we actually talk about errors and error handling, and there we'll dive more deeply into the error codes. But just so you know, you may have seen this in different places before. 404 means not found. And that means that's the response from the server saying, hey, what you're looking for is not here, not found. In the case of this Express server, it actually gives us a nice message back saying cannot get /. Okay? So we will solve that. And let me break the problem down. The problem now, remember what happens if we don't have a server listening? If we kill the server so there's nothing listening, the browser says the site cannot be reached, right? But if we start the server so that there is a server listening at that address, we now have something listening at that address, but it tells us it cannot get /. When you go to a URL with nothing at the end, you're going to what is called the root of the application. Okay, you're going to the root of the application, which means you're entering the front door into like the living room of the application, right? You hit it, the door is there, you're going into the root of the application. That is the route defined as /. this here is the same as if I did this. Exactly the same thing. You see when I put the slash there, the browser removed it because that's the same thing. So the root of the application is slash. Now we don't have anything defined for managing the root, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to create a route handler for the root. So root is R-O-O-T, and route is R-O-U-T-E. So we're going to create a route handler for the root. A route is an address, a path. Essentially, what your GPS does is it takes you along the route, right, somewhere. So we're going to create a route handler for that root destination. And that is pretty easy to do. On our web server, we'll say app dot, and then what method do we want to use? Okay, get, right? Because this is the method that this is trying to use, is get. So the syntax for defining a handler for that is the server, and then the method, and then here, it's a function essentially. But it's a method on the app, on the server object. So we're saying, okay, we're going to set up a route handler for get. Now, what is the route we want to handle? Slash, right? So we'll come here and say, yeah, so in this code, we say slash. We'll define that. Now, the route handlers typically accept at least two parameters. Right? The first parameter is the route, and then the second parameter is how to handle it. Is essentially a callback function that will handle the route. So that is typically, right, res, okay? And I will say return this is handled. Okay, let me kill this. Let me run this again. And let's come here and let's see what happens. Oh, sorry, hold on. This is hanging. It's not return, is response that's send. This is handle. And I'm going to kill this server and run it again. Let's see what we get. You see that? Okay, this is handle. Because that's what I sent back from my server. This is something fun that the people in the front end squad will recognize. If I do this here, H1, and I save that. Now the thing is, when you save with when you save your server, you have to rerun it, because once it's listening, it won't update with the code. I'll show you in 1 second how to run the server in a way where it's monitoring your changes and updating with the code. I'm going to run it here again. And if I come here and I refresh this, boom, I sent HTML back. Okay. And look at this. We wrote a server with what? 10 lines of code. We have literally built a web server with 10 lines of code. And it's returning HTML. So I'm going to walk through it line by line and explain it again before we go on. And then I'll see if there are any questions, okay?
Yay!
All right. So I'm going to kill the server. So remember the first thing we did was npm install express. That's the npm module that gives us a web server, right? And we then require that. This is how you import a module into your code so you can use it. So we require that module express into the variable. We just called it express. We could call it anything, but we just call it express so that it's easy to track, right? Now, we also created a new variable called app, and we saved an instance of an express server by calling the express function. So this module we imported returns a function, okay? And we we created an instance, we created a new server by calling the express function, which gives us a new server. And we save that server in app so that we can declare routes on it and we can have it listen on the port and all of that. And then here is where we declare a route handler for the root route. The method we're supporting here is get, right? And this is the standard format for a route handler in Express, right? This is the standard format. You have to have a request, the callback function. Remember, this is an arrow function. You recognize that? This is arrow here. So this is actually the same thing as declaring an anonymous function, like this function. Sorry. Okay. This is the same function request. This is an anonymous function. If you remember this from last week, a function without an identifier is an anonymous function. But this is old JavaScript. We're going with ES6 here. So the preferred way of writing this is without that function keyword and the arrow. So that's an arrow function. We need the closing semicolon. Okay? Any questions? And then app.listen starts the server to listen on that port. And any request going to that port will be handled by the appropriate route.
Yeah,
So
I have.
yes.
Wait, Leki, before you ask your question, most of the terms you've used we're hearing for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to explain some concepts using new words.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, like route handler, all this is we've never heard them before. So
Mm-hmm.
you might need another explanation that really, really dumbs things down.
Well, I can't dumb it down.
You can, if you can't dumb it down, okay,
right,
Leki, up to
right,
you. You understand what he's saying, so continue asking questions.
Well, so no, yes, let me put it this way. Before you ask, let me put it this way. I don't want to dumb it down too much because the world out there doesn't dumb things down too much, right? But I will explain it. And I want you to I use those terms because I want you to learn to use those terms. Those are the terms that if you speak to any other developer, they'll understand what you mean. You get. Remember I said you can't say, it's a this thing that does this thing. No, there's no this thing that does this thing. It's a route handler, it's a browser, it's a GET request, it's a method, right? It's an HTTP request. You get what I mean? You have to use the right terms. So I'll use those terms, I will explain them, but when you talk, try to use those terms. You get what I mean? So a route, remember I said a route is like an address. It's a path somewhere, like your GPS. right? I tried to dumb it down with that. So a route is the path of a GPS. A route handler is what is at that address, what gives you the response at that address. Because like I said, when you go to an address like this, you're actually going to that address with a slash. That is called the root of the application, right? So that slash, what you need is, because it's the root of the application, you need a route handler for that root, which means you need to define in your web server, you need to define a callback function that is listening for that method at that address. So it's looking for a request coming to that method at that address. I can actually come here and say app.post, right? Same route, right? Request, response, right? And res.send, you sent me something. What's going on here? This is doing too much. All right, there. Right? If I do that and I start this server and I make a request, if I refresh that page, which of these two will be called? What do you expect to see on the page?
This is handled.
This is handled. Because the method I use here is get. Right?
Yeah.
That's the method I use. Now, if I'm going to use Firefox to do something so I can show you something. So let's see. Here's my Firefox. Oh, this is Firefox. All right. So let's come to, okay, and oh, this is where we are. So I'm going to open up a tool here that I can use to make a request with a different method. So here I'm going to make a request post to HTTP localhost, right? 4300. Guess what my response here? You sent me something. And that is, you sent me something. It's the same address, but I'm getting two different responses because I'm using a different method. So the request I made with the post method, I get you sent me something. If I change the method here to get, and I send that request, I get my, see that? This is handled, my HTML back. So that is how the methods are different, which means that I can send data to the server with my post and it will do something with it. This is how you actually build an endpoint to capture data from a form. If you want to send information from a form in the front end to the server and have it save it in a database, you would create a post endpoint. If you want to just handle the request and return data back, like let's say I have a server that's serving our list of participants, right, in the project. If I want to get the list of participants, I'll make a get request to it. If I wanted to create a new participant, I'll make a post with the data for the new participant. We're going to dive into that better, but does everyone understand the difference now? How the methods can affect what is returned?
Yep.
And this is a route handler for the get method. This is a route handler for the post method.
Right. So can I ask a question?
Okay.
Yes, please.
So basically, these methods, you can basically tell tell them what you wanted to happen when you send, with this, where you put the function that do this if it
Yes.
comes up as post or get.
Yes.
Now, on a normal website, when I do, I guess what is the standard get to the roots of that server, is that where it normally will pick up what we call the index HTML file?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So the server has a route handler that sends back the index HTML.
Okay. And in that situation, you would have typed in here where you said REST sends. It wouldn't be this small HTML. It would have been return back this index HTML file.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you for and we call it the root handler. But carry on.
Yes. It's a route. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the British will call it the root handler. But
I have a, okay, sorry.
yes.
Go ahead, no, complete.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, but to differentiate between root, R-O-O-T, and root, R-O-U-T-E, the route handler for the roots.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is on the require. I noticed that there are like 3 dots under the require for that when we, on the first line, the constant express.
Yeah, I don't know what's, that's VS Code. I don't know what that's about.
Okay. As the first time I was seeing it, so I was thinking maybe there was something that was maybe not correct, but then, I mean, everything works, but
yeah,
I was just curious about that.
Right, if anything is wrong, if I misspell require here, let's say I take away the E, I save that here, right? I'm going to kill this and I try to run that. Boom, I get an error. Required is not defined. Okay, so it has to be proper. All right, now require is part of Node.js. It's not part of standard JavaScript. It's specifically provided by Node.js. So it comes with Node.js. Okay, so if you're running a Node application, then require becomes available. All right, so that's it. We now know how to create a web server, and you can create a whole bunch of routes. You can create routes and routes and routes and routes. We're going to look at how to create routes a little more efficiently. But let's do one more thing. Let's return on this get, rather than just returning this string, let's return a JSON object. So we're going to say const person is right, first name John, last name Doe, gender male, age age 35. Okay, and we need a closing semicolon down here. And I will send that. Okay, and then here, rather than sending this string, we're going to send that JSON object. So this is been. So here, we're going to do person. And I'm going to save this. And we're going to come back to this tool. We're going to make a, we're not running the server. Let's run the server. And we come back to this tool. And we send this request. We get this. When you have an endpoint that returns it nicely like this, you see how colorful it is? This is a JSON object. If we come into Chrome and we refresh this as well, we get a JSON object, and Chrome actually handles it as a JSON object. And if you want to,
see that code again that you typed in. That's this one.
I'm about to come back here. And let's say, and I want to make it more interesting, and then we'll leave it there and move on. All right, people. And I'll make it an array of persons, right?
You misspelled first name though.
Yeah, all right, let's fix that. Okay, and I'm gonna add another person here who would be Jane, last name, Doe, right? Gender, female, age, 32. All right, and then here, we need to close this array. And then I change that to people, right? So I'm gonna, our response, the send, will send people. Now if I refresh this, oh, I need to stop this server and start it up again. And then here, I run this. Now I have an array of 2 people, and Chrome deals with it nicely so that I can actually collapse each one because it's an array. Okay. And if I look here in my browser, in my inspector, if I click on localhost here and I look at response here, I can see that it's a JSON string, and I can preview it, and it tells me I have an array of people, 1, 0, and 1. I can expand each one. So this is JSON, and this is the type of output that we would be returning from the backend. Okay, because remember, the front end squad is working on the front end to take this output and render it nicely. Okay.
So seems like you're using Firefox. Is it so we can do the get and the post using
You
Chrome?
can. I'm going to share a link for a tool that you should get. Okay. There's a tool that each person should download, and it's called Postman. If you're on the backend squad, you need this. This is like going to be very important. All right. And I was going to share this at the end of the class so that you get this and you use it. But this is Postman, and it literally allows you to do that. So let me come here. Sorry, I'm on Linux, so the way I install it is different. So sudo apt. So now I can run this one. Wait, do I have it? No. Oh, unable to locate package. Sorry. Let's see where it is. Postman. API client. Download. And this is what Postman looks like. You see, it looks very much like the tool I use. Right? So please, everyone, go, if you're on the backend squad, go get Postman and I'll figure out how to get it for, okay, here.
Does it matter where we install it?
No, it shouldn't matter. Yeah, I'm not going to bother installing it because I use a different tool. But just install it and you'll use it a lot. Okay? So there you go for setting up our first web server. We're going to move to another topic before we come back and put them together.
Oh, okay, so we haven't installed anything yet. We're just following you at this point, right?
Yes,
Okay.
just follow. You'll have 2-3 days to catch up and watch the
Okay.
video over again and practice.
Okay.
Okay. But are we good? Nobody's hopelessly lost, right? And you recognize what I did here with the array and the JSON.
I am hopelessly lost, but that's okay.
Okay. Okay. We'll catch up right after the class. Let's see how hopeless the hopelessly lost is. But most of what we've done here, like I brought this in to refresh our memories of arrays and JSON, because we will be working with this a lot. So for the backend squad, you're not going to be doing any HTML. You're going to be doing a lot of outputting arrays and JSON, right? Because you're the business logic, not the fancy side.
Nice.
You're the power side. So this is the God side of it. If you say nothing's happening, like I can come here and shut down the server, so no one's seeing anything until I get a good bribe.
Nice.
Right? So this is like the God level. You know?
Yeah, we won't share what we did in high school.
Stop making these backend people feel cool with themselves.
No, I'm also kind of a backend person, so yeah, we're cool. I'm gonna get some big chains and all that to come, you know,
Nice.
to emphasize the coolness. Yeah. So my dog heard all the excitement and came running in to see what was going on. So, all right. So yeah, so we'll go on and move on to the next section. We're going to talk about databases. Okay. We're going to talk about, and more specifically, we're going to talk about relational databases and MySQL. Okay. So what is a database? Anybody? Can anybody volunteer what a database is?
Where you store data, I guess, in tables, or I just remember from Access, Microsoft Access.
Yes, so Microsoft Access was a database, yes. Yes, so a database is a store for data. And you have many different kinds of databases, right? Pretty much everything that you do online is working with a database in the back end somewhere, right? Different types. A columnar database, a relational database, a document database, who cares? There are many different types of databases. For this course and this project, we're going to be working with MySQL, which is a relational database, right? It's owned by Oracle, but MySQL is free, right? So it's a relational database. Now, a database is a data store.
Sorry to cut you here, but I know there was something about free access to Oracle database. Is there anything that we could get from that before they stop their free access to their stuff?
I wouldn't bother.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, like I wouldn't bother. So with MySQL is free. MySQL is powerful, right? It's one of the most popular databases out there because it just works, right?
Okay.
Oracle bought it some years ago because it had so much community following and so much popularity. It was actually starting to compete with Oracle's own database itself. So MySQL is now owned by Oracle. It is still free of license for the community edition. So you can build the applications, host your websites, whatever on MySQL, no problem. So a database is a storage system for data of specific types, right? A relational database is a database that can store data of specific types where the types can be related to each other. Let me break it down. Let's say I have information about people and I have information about companies, right? You can have many people working for one company, right? Maybe some people freelance and work for two companies. You would have a store, a table of people, and you'd have a table of companies. And you can have a relationship between people and companies. That is a relational database. So what would happen in a relational database is I have person A, B, C working for company X. I create a relationship between them such that person A works for company X, person B works for company X, and person C works for company X, right? The benefit of a relational database is that I can just go and change the name of company X to company XXY. And automatically person A now works for company XXY, company B works for XXY, company C works for XXY. I don't have to change the people's information because they are related to that company. So whatever changes happen in the company, they automatically inherit because of the link to the company. That's part of the benefits of a relational database. But think of a database as storing collections of, especially in a relational database, think of it as storing collections of the same type of data. So you wouldn't have a table that has people and companies in the same table. You have a separate table for people and a separate table for companies. Excuse me for 1 second. Let me tell this dog to behave. Alto.
Aha.
All right. I have a husky that thinks it's still in the wild. Okay. So you'd have a table for people and a table for companies. The people table only has people there, and the company table only has companies. What is a table? A table is like an Excel spreadsheet, literally a table. Columns and rows. So each person in the people table has a first name, last name, gender, age. Those are columns, and then you can have rows of people, just like you would in Excel. Same thing, a company has a name, street address, city, state, zip. That's a company. You have a column for each field. We call them columns, we also call them fields. So if you want to relate these people that we have here in our JSON object to a database, each person here would be a row, or what we also call a record. You can use either term. You can call it a row, or you can call it a record. But each person here would be what we call a row or a record in the people table, right? So a table for the type, or what we call the entity. And then in that table, essentially you have columns or fields, and then you have rows or records. And that's a database table. And then you bring multiple tables together to form a database or a schema, right? In MySQL world, just call it a database and you're good. In other worlds, Oracle, maybe in MS SQL, Postgres, a schema is the proper term. But just call it a database where in MySQL here, and you're fine. A database is a collection of tables that can potentially be related together. You know, they're kind of around the same general subject. And each table holds data for a specific entity type. People, companies, cars, bills, right? Departments. A department can be, you can have a department's table that can be related to a company and to people. People can belong to a department in a company, right? So are people in payroll. So people are work for company X and are in the payroll department of company X, right? And then there's payroll, there's engineering, there's sales. These are all departments that could be departments of company X. And they could have people or have no one working for them. So you see that you can have the relationships between them and it forms like a network. So that's a database. Any question? So what I'm going to do here, and we'll work this out some more over Slack. I'll send out instructions, but for the backend people, you're going to need to install a lot more software. Okay.
Nice.
Yes, I know we love installing software. It's fun. You download all day long. All right. We're going to need to install the MySQL Community Edition so that we have a MySQL server locally we can play with. Okay. This would be the beginning of isolating our data from other people. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is let me pull up my terminal. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'll do it from the terminal. Let me show you the hard way first. Not because I want to, but because that's the easy way for me. So, all right. So I'm going to MySQL. All right. Can you see you see my screen there?
Yes. So you've already installed it, right?
Yeah. So I already have MySQL. Oh, I have a whole bunch of databases. So because this is my personal computer, but I have a lot of different projects that I work on. But what I'm going to do here is I am going to use SQL, and I'm doing this because I want to teach us SQL right now. So over the next 15, 20 minutes, right, we'll learn some SQL. It's not difficult, it's English, okay? So SQL is structured query language. If you Google SQL, right, and actually on W3 Schools, there's a SQL tutorial. So if you come to our good old W3 Schools, there's a SQL tutorial. And SQL is English, but I'll show you, I'll teach you some, and you can always dig here for more if you're very hungry for more. But as we work, you actually learn more SQL. So SQL is structured query language, and it's a language for interacting with databases. More specifically today, relational databases, but a lot of non-relational databases also support SQL to an extent of flavors of SQL. Now, most databases have certain SQL statements that are common to them. So if you run it on one on Oracle, it will work on MySQL, work on MS SQL Server or Postgres, right? So there are certain commands that are basic, right? We'll learn a lot of those today. But SQL is structured query language, and that's the language used to query databases, to interact with databases, okay? It is very simple. It is English, but it has a particular syntax as well, okay? It has a particular syntax it has its own keywords, right? It has its own methods or functions. And the functions are usually specific to the database we're interacting with. So there are MySQL functions, which are the ones that we will learn as we go along when we need them. But those won't necessarily work for Oracle or Postgres or that. Those will have their own equivalent functions that do the same thing, but are written in a different way. Okay? But for now, we're just going to start with SQL. So the first command I'm going to run, the first SQL statement I'm going to write is a SQL statement to create a new database. And that is, who can guess what that command will be? Anyone?
Create.
Create.
So, create what?
Tor Odinson.
DB.
Database.
DB.
Database. Create database. Now, one thing you've already noticed here is that my SQL keywords I am typing in uppercase, right? That's just the proper way to do it. I could type it in lowercase, it won't care. MySQL won't care, but some database engines will, right? So get used to your SQL statements being in uppercase.
Sure, make up your minds.
Right? And now, it is the SQL standard. So if you're writing SQL, your SQL statements should be in uppercase. It's just that different engines are some are more forgiving than others. But being forgiven doesn't mean you shouldn't do it the right way. Right? Also, on Linux servers and many platforms, MySQL is actually case sensitive on table names and field names. So on my computer, for example, the table names are case sensitive. So the best practice for table names is all lowercase. Remember what I said in, try to go all lowercase when you're programming as much as possible. That prevents you from running into case problems, right? So we're going to create a database called Classroom. Database name, all lowercase, okay? And you usually terminate the statement with a semicolon. And now, you remember the list of databases I have here, right? I don't have Classroom here. If I do the command show databases again, and I press enter, now I have Classroom. Voila. Okay. You will need to do this on your local install. Git pull will not give you the database, sorry. All right. Okay. I'll add the instructions to Slack like I did last night. I'll add them tonight so that will be easier. All right. Now that I have created my Classroom database, I am not yet in it. I just have it there, but I need to switch to the database. And so the way you would say it in MySQL is use that database. So I would say use, right? Use Classroom. And you see what it says now? Database changed. Okay? But my database is currently empty. So if I do a show tables command, it tells me empty set. There's nothing in there. Okay, so let's aim for capturing this information. This is the information we want to capture. Right? But let's aim for creating a people table. Who can guess what the command would be for that?
Create table.
Okay, create table. Create table, right?
People.
People, right? But we're not done yet because I need to give this table columns, right?
Okay.
I need to
Yeah.
say what the columns are.
So
It's
you
like
got
creating a spreadsheet. This, if you think of it from an Excel perspective, it's like creating an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so fine, you create a new spreadsheet, yeah. So until you actually create columns, your data has no meaning, right? So
Yep.
I need to create the columns or the fields in my database. So if you look right here, one of the great things here is that there is gotta be something here for creating a table. Where is it? What's wrong with these people? Okay, create table. Right there. And this is what the syntax looks like, right?
Okay.
Okay, something like this. So let's do that here. We're gonna open a parenthesis. Now remember that you end a statement with a semicolon. So as long as I don't have a semicolon, even if I press enter here, MySQL is like, okay, you're still continuing. So you see, it just gives me this arrow here. Some people have seen something like this in the terminal where they've opened the quote and accidentally forgotten to close it. But to give you a dash and wait for you. So create table. I want to create an ID field, right? Like I want to have each record in there have a unique identifier, right? And it would be ID and then the data type, which would be int,
Integer.
right? And then the size up to 14 characters, right? Now in this case, I'm going to do something like this. Well, never mind. Let's not create an ID field. Let's create the fields that we know. So I want a first name, right? First name, right? Or we can do first name, which is a better syntax for databases, right? And this will be a variable character, 255, right? And then we want a last name, which would be, ideally, it should be like that in uppercase as well, right? 255. And 255 is the size of it. How many characters? So we'll allow up to 255 characters.
Make up their mind with this upper and lower case thing.
No, I will. It is for me to make up my mind. So I'll try to stick with the proper syntax as much as possible. So last name, right? Email. Make that varchar 255, right? Gender. Make that varchar. The longest is female, which is 6, right?
Okay.
Or let me do this. I'm going to do something easier.
You're not very woke.
It's not politically correct.
I am not being woke here. I'm a developer. I'm actually going to be even stricter here. And I'm going to use this to demonstrate the concept here. Okay. And then age will be an integer. And you're allowed to be 3 digits old. If you're above 999, you're on your own. Right? And then let's say you want to capture the date and time, right? So we can say date created. Now we can say timestamp.
What if you wanted to capture fractions in the age? What would you use? Floats?
Float.
Interesting.
That would be float. Okay. And I can close this and with a semicolon, press enter. Now, if I now go back to my show tables command, look at that. I have a people table.
Wow. It's like magic.
And you know what? If I say describe, so here's another command you might like, is describe people. It tells me what the fields are for my people table, the type of data they can hold, whether or not the field can be null. Okay, so this is my people table. Now, how do I query this table? How do I get information out of this table? I use a statement called select, or a keyword called select. Select is how you extract from a database, or how you read the information in the database. So if I say select all, which is star, this is not multiplication now. In SQL, this means all fields, right? From looks like I didn't spell that right. So, from people, semicolon. There, my database is still empty, right? Let's do this. Let's say insert into people. This is a new statement for inserting. So we'll insert and then we'll come back and do some selects. Okay, but insert into people values. Now this is tricky because I have to provide the values in exactly this order: first name, last name, email, gender, age. Okay, so I'll say John Doe, right? John at example.com, male, 35. Okay. Column count does not match value count at row 1 because I skipped the date created. So let's do this again. And I'll go with now. Now is a MySQL function. You see that it's written like a function, right?
I'm loving this.
So it is a MySQL function for the current timestamp. And if I press enter now, and I go back to my previous query, and remember, just like with your command prompt in Linux on the MySQL terminal, you can press up to recall previous queries. If I now say select from people, here, I have my data, and you can see the timestamp is right there. Because this field is a current timestamp. So let's add Jane. So I'm just going to come here, and I'm going to modify this for Jane. And I'll make this Jane at example.com. I will make her female. Oh, what do I do? And let's make it 32. And I do that. And now I come and I do my select. And our database now has 2 records in it. And you can see the columns, the column headings, gender, age, date created. John, Jane. Okay. Now, I'm just going to run some more queries just for fun. We don't need them right now, but just so you can see some examples of how to use like select. So I'm going to select only the first name and the last name columns, right? Remember the asterisks in my select meant select all the names. Oh, sorry, all the fields. Now I'm going to select specific fields. So I can say select first name, right? Last name, gender from people. That only gives me those 3 columns. I can say select all from people where gender is female. That only gives me Jane. The keyword I added here now is where, which now, I'm now adding a predicate, a condition, pretty much, to my query, right? Any questions? Looks like fun, right? I can say.
You used the power shortcut there using the asterisk, but you didn't tell them what that was for.
I did. I said that means all fields.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that. Just wanted to make sure others understood.
Mm-hmm. So this means all columns. This means all columns. In this case, I am not doing all columns. I'm selecting specific columns. You either select specific columns or you select all columns. You see that? And so let's do one more. I'm just going to add one more to my select query just for fun. Let's order the results. So let's say select all from people. And who can guess how we would order it? Anyone? I want to order my results.
Sort ascend or sort descend.
Close. I actually use the exact word I would use. Order by first name. Name. And now Jane is first, John is second. Now, because you said sort descend, if I say order by first name, descending, right? And that gives me John first and Jane last because I'm ordering by first name descending. So you see that SQL is literally just English. If I send this to you in a text message and I'm like, select cash from account where amount is greater than $5,000, you'd be like, okay, but you understand what I mean, right?
I got a question. Is the so like first name, the nomenclature for SQL, we use underscore versus capital
versus camel case. You can use camel case.
Okay.
You can use camel case. The reality is that for me, I'm used to actually using camel case in my database tables as well.
Okay.
But a lot of projects that you will work with or that you end up on will use underscore. It's more like the de facto convention now.
Okay.
But back in the day, it used to be camel case.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Yeah, but to avoid having case issues, just go all lowercase and underscore.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Any questions? SQL is easy, right? Where in databases, we know what a table is. We know what a database is. We know what the columns are. And we can see records in our database table. And remember, you can say show tables. Let me write it properly. Show tables. And that shows you the tables that you have. You can describe a table. Describe people. And that shows you the columns or the fields that you have. You see the title here is fields. So it shows you the fields that you have, the data type for each field, right? Whether or not it can be null, etc., etc. Okay. The last thing I will do here is I'm going to add a user to my database, right? Just for test purposes. So I'm going to say grant all on that is grant all privileges on the classroom database, and dot star means all tables, right? To classroom user, oh, come on, at localhost identified by password 1234. I'm just typing it again, just so that you can see it all on one line. That's how it was supposed to be. This is me giving all privileges, right, to this user. Classroom user at localhost means this user on the database machine, on the database server, and identified by gives my password, gives the password I wanted to use. I'm going to do this again. Okay. What this does for me is it allows me to now connect to use and if I say show databases, I only have access to Classroom because that's the only database I granted access to. I can say use Classroom. Okay, don't worry about this command that I use to connect right now. You'll sort it out. I'll provide more instructions on Slack. Okay, but I just added this user because I want to take us one step further very quickly as possible. And if we hit that, then we hit the goal for this session 100%. The last thing I want to do, any questions about databases first? Before I jump in?
This one's a breeze.
It was a breeze, right? It's fun.
No, don't mind him. It's a breeze for him. So now, I was just chatting with the guys about how. Well, first of all, I was blown away by the fact that somebody is creating tables outside of Google Sheets. So, what do I need Google Sheets for if I can do everything here?
You don't. Are you gonna? I mean, you can do whatever you want. So the benefit of this is like
that's just awesome, man.
Yeah. So you can shop at McDonald's, right? Or you can learn how to make a burger, right? Now, if you shop at McDonald's, you're limited to what McDonald's has on their menu. And the day they take their favorite burger off, the day they take your favorite burger off their menu, your life is a little less fun. But you learn how to make a burger, and you're not restricted. And the day you decide, you want jalapenos in that burger, you buy jalapenos and put in your burger because you know how to make it. Right? That's what this is. If you learn how to program.
That's an awesome analogy because those guys have been serving me some really horrible burgers. Horrible.
Right. So now you'll be able to make your own. And the last step, the reason I want to do this last step is I want to connect that server that we did and the database together, and that will really make something that you would like to see. All right, so let's jump into that. I'm sorry, I might do this a little quickly, but the video will be there and you can slow it down. You can play it at half speed. Yes, sorry, you were going to ask something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, like he used Google Sheets. I was thinking more about Excel.
Excel, yep.
Like, yeah, you can have like interaction between data sets and all that, but all I've seemed to see here is just create, select. So, like, is there more to it than that?
There's a lot more to it. There are SQL, MySQL commands that can perform aggregate queries, mean, median, max. There's all kinds of stuff you can do on the database. Now you bring that and you bring all the power you have from JavaScript. Like you can do anything. You can compare images, facial recognition. How do they work? They actually search a database of images to match the image you're looking for. Like what you can do, you can't do with Google Sheets or Excel, because those themselves are built around the database. There's a database in the background somewhere, either in memory but there's something holding that data or disk. Okay, so learning this gives you, think about it. Think about solutions you want to solve. So let me give you one example. Many years ago, like in 2010, 2010 through 2012. So I'm visually challenged, right? I'm actually legally blind, but I have a license on the MVA that I had to go through a special program for, right? And going through this program, they told me I had to take 60 hours of logged driving. Like I had to log everywhere I drove for 60 hours. So if I drove to the mall, 15 minutes, I had to write on the sheet, drove here, 15 minutes, whatever. By the end of like the third day, it was so annoying. I had this sheet, I was writing it in, and I was like, I'm not even going to know when I get to 60 hours without constantly having to add up every day or keep a running tally somewhere. So I built a small app for myself. Essentially, I just created a database table for it, right? I created the front end and a server, built an app on my computer, and go anywhere, I just put it in there. And I had to show me how many hours I had left at the top, right? And then one day I was like, hey, okay, I have 12 hours. I need to burn 6 hours. Let's drive to Ocean City. Got in the car, drove to Ocean City, 3 hours, drove back from Ocean City, 3 hours, 1 day trip. Got me 6 hours in there. 6 hours left to burn, right? But I use a database and an app and a small server and all that to solve that problem. So you'll find situations. You might own a business and you're constantly running tally, or you might want to write something to calculate your taxes or your expenses. You know, you'll find something. Every day there's a problem that you're like, this is very repeated. I'm not getting enough out of information from this. You can always write a program to make it easier. And who knows, you write a program to make something easier for you. Someone will see it and be like, look, you need to make this public. You make an app, Apple buys it, you're $400 million wealthier. Like, yo, I know that guy. Right? He's the one that was always asking questions. All right. So that's kind of how it works. All right. So let's jump in. I want to connect this database to our Express server. I want to capture this data and I want to bring it out of the database. First thing that we need is we need to install the MySQL module so that we can connect to the database, right? Who remembers the command to install an npm package? Anyone who can guess?
Apt-get npm install.
No, close, but so I want to install an npm
Was it require?
module. Yeah, I want to install an npm module to connect to MySQL. So it actually
Right.
is almost exactly that. Npm install MySQL save, right? And that installs the MySQL module. It allows me to connect to the database.
So can
now,
I? Okay, so I've already got my MySQL already on my machine.
Okay.
There's nothing stopping me from still connecting it to this new web server I'm going to create, is there?
No, there's nothing stopping you.
I'll just create a separate list of tables that I want to use, or different databases actually.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this database I'm creating will not, when I push it, it won't go out. So let's look at this. So now I'm going to Google Node MySQL very quickly because I don't, off the top of my head, remember how to use this module. So here, I'm going to come here. I just did a Google for Node MySQL. The first match here is, you see that? Pure Node.js, JavaScript, whatever. So here, this is the MySQL module for Node. And I'm coming to the documentation here. So this is the command here, npm install MySQL, right? And then once I've set it up here, remember, recognize this, require MySQL. So here, let me come here, and I'm going to say const MySQL equals require MySQL, right? And then I want to create a new connection here. And so equals MySQL dot create connection, and that takes a JSON object as an argument. You see that here? It's a JSON object as an argument. And so here I want to provide my host, localhost, because it's on my computer. User, I don't need quotes for that. I can say user, classroom, user. This is why I created that user. Password, 1234. And then what's the last thing here? Database classroom. All right. Yeah.
So when it says password secret, that means it's encrypted or is not encrypted?
No. No. This is what he called his password.
Oh, okay, because I was
it's
thinking
literally, yeah.
It's like a Cisco.
No, it is what he called it. His password in that example is literally secret. In mine, if you look at my screen, my password is password 1234, which is what I specified here. Remember? So when I was granting my privileges, this is the password. So now I have that. I've created my connection, and I'll say connection.connect. Right? And now I have connected to the database. So see this? This shows me how to perform a query. Right? So in my, let's do this. Rather than return this, I want to pull from the database, right? So I am going to write my query here, and I'm going to say connection.query, right? Select all from people, right? And then this takes a callback function, which is an anonymous function. Remember, like we have here, we have this anonymous function like this for this. For the MySQL, this is the structure of the callback. An error parameter and the results parameter. I don't really care about the fields parameter. So I'm going to say error results, right? And this is an arrow function, right? And I will say res the send results. Okay. Now let's try this. Let's try running our Node server. Our server is running well. Perfect. Let's come to our page here. Let's refresh this and look at what we have. We have our data from the database. You see that? This is from our database. Because it's in our database that we have this date created field, right? And email. This is coming from our database. If we come to our database here, let's come here and use classroom. And let's insert one more row into this. Let's install our good old James Jack. Right? And this is James at example.com, and his male, and he's a reasonably aged fellow. So I've added James to the database now. And if I come here and I refresh this, look, I have James. So we've connected it all together. Now, this is our get. Let me do one last thing very quickly. If you will give 3 more minutes, I want to be able to create a new user from the browser. And that's going to be very quick. So remember that to send data to the server, we use the post method, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a post, right? And I'm going to say in our request, there's something called the body that contains all the data. When I submit, you'll see it. Right now, let me just write it. So I'm going to do something. No, let me not make it complex. So I'll say, SQL equals insert into, right, people, and we'll say first name, last name, email, age, gender. This is another version of the insert that allows me to only insert specific fields. So, and then I'll say values, right? And here, let's say did I finish this? Okay, that's MySQL. Then I'll say MySQL, sorry, MySQL.query, SQL, which is my variable, and an array of rec let's say data dot first name, data dot last name, data dot male, data dot gender, data dot age. This is, I won't explain this today fully, but I'll explain it better on Friday. Okay, and then the last thing I want to do here, and this is done pretty much. Class data equals request body. And then here, I want to do a callback. Actually, now I'll do a callback. Oh, come on. I'm in a hurry. Okay, so this should be good. And let me save this and run this. And so we'll come here to our tool here. And what we'll do is run the posts and request body and send JSON. So first name, body, right? Last name, John Jack. Gender, male, age, 7, what's last, email, all right, so let's try this out. I tried out this post here. Yeah. I was hoping this will work without an error, but no. Sadly, we shall have to stop without seeing. Are we out of time, or are you willing to see this work?
I'm willing to see it work.
I'm open.
If anybody has a hard exit, they can leave.
Let's go for it.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Right. That. Oh. Body. All right. So I'm just troubleshooting this here because it's saying cannot read property first name of undefined, right? Which is here my data.first name. So there's a problem with this line here. Wait, is it right the body of here? Hold on. Content type application JSON. Let's see. All right. So I'm gonna try this again, and let me just comment out these lines so that we can. So I can run this again. And I already have this set up, so all I need to do is to resolve that bug. Undefined. Okay. This record data. Oh yeah. Sorry. It is record data. And if I run this here, no. I'm going to show you, well, no, you will see, I don't know if you understand this, but you'll see how I'm debugging this. Our request is empty. So, which is why. Okay.
One day we will debug like this. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. I know what I need to do here. I'll do this. And look, this is going to solve it. So the problem wasn't with my code, it's actually with this. And with Postman, you won't have this. So let me close this. With Postman, you won't have this problem. Okay. So, come on. So the problem here is I actually have to write out this JSON. So first name, Wale, last name, John Jack, right? And then gender, right? Male. And then email, the Wale Jack at example.com. And then age will be an integer, which is 77. Okay, and then let's come here. I'm going to change this back to body. And let's run this. And I did a console log here so I can see what's coming in. So if I run that, I run this one, right? What on earth is going on? Yeah, I know there's something wrong with my system. This is not sending the data. So, well, sadly, people, we shall have to hold this here. It was a bold attempt, but and I don't have Postman, but I will share. I'll work on getting this, and I'll share a video of it. But I'll leave this code here and push it out, and let's see if someone can get it to work. So I'm going to remove this console log here, and I'll uncomment the code, and I'll commit this and push. And if anyone wants, and if you want to stay on after we end the class, you can stay on and we can debug it together. Now I'm super excited to see what is going on here. So, but I will stop recording. So we'll end the class. Any questions?